I'm Rich Carey from Rich on Money. This is the first podcast of my Rich on Money podcast series. Why I think this is so cool, just delivering content, sharing with people, teaching people how to do well with money, probably more specifically or more often, how to do well with real estate, but also with investing. But what I want to say first, I've said this so many times over the last 8 years, because of the circles that I've been in, I guess because of the conferences and podcasts I've been on and friends that I've met through doing this stuff for so long, I love to say that I'm the only person I know who hasn't started a podcast yet. And there's a lot of truth to that. Everybody in my circle that has any online platform at all, lots of people with much smaller platforms than me, man, they started a podcast a long time ago. And there's people I know on episode 300. So about damn time I got started. So what I want to talk about first is, I guess you could say my life, a quick introduction of who I am. And then I'm going to go through different parts of my life financially. I guess I would say financial and real estate and life milestones that kind of shaped who I am and what my philosophy is and some lessons learned from that. And then I ended up going to Utah for college. I was in college for 4 years in Utah. Ended up doing ROTC, which means you're prepping to go into the military. And then I joined the military, and that was in 2000. Joined the military for 20 years. I spent 11 of those years overseas, but 20 years in the military, 2000 to 2020. While I was in the military, I bought real estate. That started in 2003 with a townhouse in Alexandria, Virginia, and kept buying real estate up into present day. But there's a more of a story there that I'll talk about later. I always saved and invested well, was frugal. I have a philosophy to investing that's very easy, and I've stuck to it, and I've done very well in my life because of that. But then I really got into real estate, which is a lot more complicated, but another way you can do well financially. And I've done both. And for people that I guess have watched me for a while, they probably think that I'm mostly a real estate guy, but I would say that more than 50% of my emphasis, or what I believe is important, would probably be on the investing, saving, like having 401ks, TSPs, IRAs, savings, all that stuff. That's first. Once you've got that, then you switch over to real estate and start knocking all that stuff out. But anyway, I moved all over the world. In 2003, I bought my first house in Alexandria, Virginia. And then let's see, did a lot of things, flipped houses for a while, but did that from overseas. We'll get into that. I moved to Monterey, California. I moved to Japan and was there for 5 years, to Montgomery, Alabama. Got started with all these houses, bought 20 houses in a short amount of time, moved to Germany, moved to Korea, retired here again in Montgomery, Alabama. Once I got back to Alabama, I bought 10 more houses quickly, or 10 more doors quickly by getting a fourplex and a sixplex, became a realtor, started managing my own properties, which I really love. I really love talking about self-management and how I've streamlined that and made my life easy and make a lot more money this way. And that probably brings us up to present day, finance-wise, real estate-wise. So let me get into some specifics. And I've got my little notes right here. And I've got a cool setup in here. I just recently set this up so I could do a lot more video comfortably. It doesn't echo that bad because I put up these cool, those things have felt in them. The rest of my house is very echoey. So I've set this up as a social media podcast recording area and planning on doing lots more content because I really love this stuff. Hey, Ronan, how you doing? What I want to talk about first, one of the first things I did that kind of shaped me, right, was, this is interesting. In college, this is going to date me, and I'm a little embarrassed about this. But in college, I joined Fidelity Investments. I joined Fidelity Investments as a stockbroker at the end of 1999. Some of you won't know what was going on because you weren't born yet or you were just born. In 1999, the big deal was Y2K. We were going to switch to 2000. And there were all these people that thought the world was going to end because the computers weren't set up to flip over to 00. They hired me as a stockbroker to man the phones. And I had to get all these licenses, 7, Series 63. I manned the phones on January 1st to handle the meltdown that didn't happen. But I got an awesome financial education there. So I was a stockbroker, not for too long because I joined the military shortly after, but I got some great training and that definitely shaped who I am today. And I got a chance to look at a lot of wealthy people's investment accounts, actually. And that kind of shaped how I invest, which is a very simple way. Next thing I wanted to talk about was, I guess, how I began to invest in IRAs, right? I started investing in IRAs in 1999, where the max you could invest was $2,000 a month. My wife at the time and myself, we both put in 2,000. I think maybe the next year we put in 2,000 again. So I don't know, we have 8,000 in those accounts. And boom, I forget what day it was. April of 2000, the stock market crashed, right? A couple of days before this happened, I talked to someone at my bank about how to invest this money. I wanted to invest in the S&P 500, which is a good idea. I invest in the S&P 500, set it and forget it. But this guy's like, hey, the stock market's been killing it and it's been amazing. And you're crazy to invest in just the S&P 500. Invest in this like crazy tech thing that we got that's going 3 times the pace of the S&P 500 index. And so I did that. I invested in this tech thing that was just killing it because of the Microsoft and the dot-com boom and all that. So a couple of days later, once I was invested in it, the stock market crashed. I think over a course of a week or two, the S&P 500 index dropped 25%, but my investment dropped more than 50%. And can't remember what I did. I think I might have sold, whether that's good or bad. And that was a painful lesson that seemed like all the money in the world. But when I look back now, that was one of the cheapest lessons I ever got in my life, where I wasted about 4,000. If I were to make that mistake today, I don't want to say how much it'd be, but it'd be a pretty big number. And I wouldn't make that mistake today. So that shaped me, right? That I don't play the hype. I don't play what's going on right now, right? There's no GameStop for me. There's no crypto. Sorry if you're a crypto fan. I do realize who's president and all that, but I'm still not a crypto fan. This isn't meant to be political at all, by the way. I'm not into hype. I'm not into short-term stuff. I'm not into day trading. I'm not even into trading individual stocks over short amounts of time. Like I just don't do that crap. We'll get into all that on other podcast episodes. What else do I want to talk about? But yeah, I contributed to IRA starting in 1999, and I have maxed it for myself and my spouse at the time, maxed every year to present day. I did the same thing in the military. TSP was different. So there's something called a military TSP, which is like a 401k for the military. I can't remember when I started investing in that, but you should invest in both. And I probably started around 2008. It was available in 2001 for the military members. I learned a powerful lesson in that because the money for my military TSP is 7 figures. And I think I started maxing it out from maybe 2007 to 2008, maxing out how much I put in every year. If I would have maxed out what I put in from 2000 to 2008, where I don't think I put in anything or not very much, if I would have done that, I think it's the biggest financial mistake in my life. That number, whatever it is, would probably be about double because the magic of the money invested 8 years earlier, when you're looking forward 30 or 40 years, is massive. The compounding that happens, massive. I really blew it by not investing in that the first 8 years of my career. I could have afforded it. Not everybody can, but I would have found a way to afford it. I was certainly not tight with money. I was just getting what a military officer gets. The maxes weren't that high back. I think the maxes are around 24,000 a year now. So that's part of my life. In 2003, first of all, I wanted to buy a house. I always had a love for real estate. I knew it was going to be a big part of my life. And we can go into the reasons why later, family stuff with my grandparents and all that. But I wanted to buy a house, but my first assignment was in Guam from 2001 to 2003, and I didn't want to buy a house there. There were too many earthquakes and typhoons. 2003, I ended up in DC, buy a townhouse for $280,000 for a townhouse, right? I thought it was the worst decision of my life. I thought I overpaid. I thought my life was ruined after that. It turned out being a pretty good decision. I bought it. I moved away. I rented it out. I owned it for 16 years. I eventually sold it. It was paid off when I sold it. And I used that money to buy a bunch of single family homes here in Montgomery, Alabama. But that was a good financial education for me. I got started in real estate and I got started in investing at that point. We'll talk about this later, but the house I bought certainly didn't meet the 1% rule. Certainly didn't cash flow very well for a long time. Didn't become a great deal until after several years where there was enough appreciation that it made sense as an investment. But as a pure cash flow investment, it didn't really work that well. We'll get good at calculating stuff like that, but it doesn't always work well in high cost of living areas. It's tough. Let's see. What do I want to go into next? Oh, yeah. My purchase of new construction. I forgot what year it was. When did the market crash? 2007, 2008, sometime around there, 2005 maybe. I signed up to buy new construction because I was going to flip it. People don't talk about this much, but back then, like between 2000 and 2007, people would, especially in high cost of living areas, sign up to buy a property with a deposit of whatever it was, 10,000 or something. The house isn't built for a year or longer, but you lock in your price with a deposit. By the time your house is ready and you go ahead and buy it, it's already went up $50,000, $100,000. And so you sell it on the day that it's ready to somebody else. You essentially flip your new construction and make an easy 5 figures for sure, but maybe 6 figures. Except that by the time I tried that, it was too late. By the time I tried that, I didn't know this yet, but the bottom was falling out of the market and prices weren't rising anymore. I couldn't sell it and I couldn't rent it out. The only person that wanted to rent this beautiful townhouse from me in a gorgeous neighborhood. It was a Section 8 family with 7 or 8 kids or something. They're the only one that could afford the rent I needed on it. I was number 6 in a tract of 300 homes that was gonna be ready. It was an end unit. It was all tricked out with all the bells and whistles you can have in new construction. Long story short, because the market wasn't gone yet, it was just dying. I had to raise the amount of money I was willing to pay my real estate agent and to pay the buyer's agent. I gave a bonus. They sold that property. I made 10,000, which I was upset about because I thought I was going to make 100,000. I made 10,000. And every single house that was completed in that neighborhood went up for sale immediately, sold for a lot less than they bought it for. And lots of them went into foreclosure. And then, of course, we know what happened to the market after that. The market was a mess for a while. This is a fun topic. Me talking about real estate and money. I have a pretty big ego, so I have fun listening to myself talk. Hopefully, somebody else thinks this is cool, at least a little bit cool. In 2005, I moved to Monterey, California. And what a cool place. Monterey, California, like Carmel, California. It's where like the Pebble Beach Pro-Am is, awesome golf place, sailing, aquarium, all that. I went to graduate school there, naval postgraduate school, and to language school for Japanese. Did that. And then in 2008, I moved to Japan for 5 years, right? All this time, here's what's going on in this time. I'm renting out my property to military members, the one that I own back in DC. And I'm flipping houses with a partner who was essentially like a real estate agent and a real estate investor who lived, I think, just a couple doors down from my townhouse in DC that I was renting out. I kept trying to buy more properties in that area for long-term rentals. I could see that the numbers weren't going to work, but he approached me about partnering on flipping houses. I was in Japan. He had all the know-how. He was honest, right? He was a good guy. He was honest. He didn't screw me over. Certainly he could have. I was using financing to buy properties, and then he did the flips. He kept expenses down. We sold the property. I paid off the loan that I would get, which were, they weren't primary residence loans, but they're 30-year fixed loans. I was buying those and selling those using just normal like financing, 30-year fixed loans for investment properties, and making 10 to $40,000 a flip. And I think we did that about 8 times. I got some money there, got some experience. I think I lost money once or twice, but I also made a lot the other times. But eventually I just thought, I'm not going to keep doing this. Who knows if this is a great track record, but who knows if it's going to keep up. So I'm in Japan, right? But yeah, I started investing in the TSP, I think, when I was in Japan. So sometime between 2008 timeframe. The military TSP is the 401k, right, of the federal government. And I started maxing that out. I told you guys about the mistake of not doing that like way sooner. But the fact that I did it at all, and the fact that I did it from 2008 until 2020 is pretty awesome. It's a good chunk of money. In 2013, I moved to Montgomery, Alabama, and that's where the story really begins. I'd say for me, when it comes to real estate, is in Montgomery, Alabama, which is where I am now. I went there for Air Command and Staff College, basically just for War College in 2013, just for 10 months. So Japan to Montgomery, Alabama. Boy, was I pissed about going there. Didn't really have any plans for real estate, but loved real estate. Didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't like the idea of being in Montgomery, Alabama, so I didn't have any high hopes about doing anything there. I was planning on being a good student, right? Planning on trying to be like a graduate with honors, and we call it distinguished graduate, but that plan changed. On the first day of class, we were all introducing ourselves to each other, and there was another military member who had been in Montgomery for a few years, and he just introduced himself to the class like, hey, I've been investing in real estate for the past couple of years here in Montgomery, and man, I'm just killing it. And at this rate, I should probably just stop my career now and just keep doing real estate because I'm just killing it. And then the next person started talking, and everybody looked at the next person, but I didn't look at the next person. I'm just like, what did this guy just say? What did he say about real estate? I didn't hear anything anyone said for the next 45 minutes. And when we got on to break, I think I leaped over a chair, ran over to him, and I said, what did you say about real estate? And anyway, long story short, peppered him with questions. Where are you buying? How much do you buy for? What's the rents? What about property manager? What about when you leave? Everything. He had an answer for everything. And he was able to tell me all the numbers. And I'd been trying to figure out real estate for a long time, unhappy with my numbers in DC. So when he told me the numbers, I'm like, okay, these numbers are amazing. If this is true, I've got to do it. I asked him a simple question. I asked him, can you help me do this? Yeah, I'll show you how to do it. And the very long story short is he had 4 houses at the time. He took me under his wing, showed me a lot of stuff, introduced me to people. I bought 6 houses over the next 10 months in cash. How did I have that cash? It's a story for another day, but nothing illegal. Wasn't like selling secrets to the Chinese or anything. I'd just been saving, I'd been investing, I'd been flipping, I'd been frugal. Eventually, when I ran out of money to buy houses, I sold my primary residence that was paid off and kept buying houses. So that's the long story short. But bought those 6 houses. Wasn't sure it was a good idea. I could have bought more, but I was scared. I'm like, what if people stop paying rent? What if people trash our places? What if the base in Montgomery closed? I had all these different worries. I moved to Germany after 10 months, realized that it was going well, and I just kept buying properties here in Montgomery, Alabama from overseas. Now, I had a property manager. They were pretty good, not perfect, but pretty good. What I'll say about working with property managers is you got to have a lot of communication with them. I could almost say you got to train them to work with you well because they're going to have their own way of doing things. And you're going to have your way that you want to do things. And you're going to have to see if you can ever meet in the right place, or you might need to move on to a different property manager. But man, I had this cool system set up with them. I had my own real estate agent that was finding all the properties with me. And I bought 20 houses with this real estate agent. She got a commission every time and she deserved it. When I was overseas, she would take pictures for me. And then when I was going to buy a property management company would go. They would look at the house. They'd tell me about the neighborhood and they'd either bless this transaction or not bless it. Then I had a inspector who took a bunch of pictures, gave me a report before I bought, and that gave me more confidence. And then I'd buy the house and then my property management company would manage the rehab, whatever it took to get it rent ready, which sometimes is expensive. They'd manage that, tacking on a little fee for themselves. And then I put the property into service. And I went from 6 properties to 20 properties. I'm not sure how long it took. Maybe 2 more years of being overseas, did all this. So I did all this while I was in Germany and it was a lot of fun and we were very happy about it. And we loved real estate, right? And we were getting a bunch of extra cash to invest and do different things with and we were happy. But God, were we paying a lot of taxes because there wasn't any loans on those houses. So that was all taxable income. But that's a good problem to have. Oh, which gets me into something else that I didn't even write down here. We were so upset about the taxes that we were paying that I came to this idea. I don't think it was the best idea ever. Oh God, I'm sick of paying these taxes. What can we do? Oh, you can own real estate inside an IRA. And then everything you do in that IRA with real estate, you don't pay taxes on it. And so we did that. 4 houses in an IRA out of the 20 that we had. 4 of them were in IRAs. And when you got the rent in, that money wasn't taxed. And when you sold the house, whenever you sold it, that money wasn't taxed. You could flip in an IRA, which I have never done, but you could. As long as you didn't flip too often, the rules get complicated. That money won't be taxed. I could talk about on a different day, different episode, the pros and cons of putting real estate in retirement accounts. But if I had to just make it simple, I'd say, don't put real estate in retirement accounts. But we did. And I can talk about it with anyone very intelligently. The main reason is you have the tax benefits I'm talking about, but you also can't depreciate when you're in an IRA and can't write off expenses when you're in an IRA. And you have a long list of rules you have to follow. And if you don't do those things correctly, you could be penalized with taxes and penalties for everything that's in your IRA. It gives me a headache. I think maybe a year ago, I got rid of my properties that were in an IRA. And they're gone now. Now that money is just sitting in an IRA invested in the market. And so now when it's in an IRA, there's like a bunch of fees and stuff. It's like more expensive to do it with real estate. They charge fees. Now that I'm back in a regular IRA company and just invested like normal, it's not as expensive. 200 Dunn Drive was my first property in Montgomery, Alabama. And it was a disaster. I think I bought it for $30,000. It's been renting out for about, I don't know, never got too high, $750 or $800 a month. Ever since I bought it. Hasn't gone up too much, hasn't gone down, but still, if you look at those numbers, it's pretty awesome. That's the first one I bought, and it's definitely the cheapest property that I bought, but it's pretty good property. I just got it at a really good price. I didn't know anything about real estate. I was not handy at all. Didn't know anything practical about real estate. The truth is I'm not even handy now, but I have a lot more experience, at least managing stuff in houses, going to rehabs, being involved in making decisions and stuff. I knew nothing back then, nothing. I spent way too much money getting this property ready to be rented. I spent, I don't know, $3,000 or $4,000 to fix up hardwood floors so that they looked like the governor's mansion, which doesn't make a lot of sense for a house that rents for $750, maybe $800 a month now. And like a lot of mistakes like that. I drastically overspent. But the weirdest thing two weird things happened with this house, my first property, that would scare most people away from investing, especially if they made the mistakes I did. Number one was when I bought it and it was sold after my inspection, right? After I got it inspected, I got a report, sold. I go into the house. There's a pile of trash in the middle of a room. I don't know if some of you see my podcasts and have probably heard me tell this story, but this pile of trash was in the middle of the room. I think there was a Christmas tree and some random trash. And I'm like, that's weird that they left this here. Moved it out of the way. And on the floor where I moved it from, the floor was raised, I don't know, a foot and a half into the air in the middle of a room. Floor's just raised a foot and a half. What the hell? The inspector didn't see that. And I'm thinking like, well, I'll sue the inspector. I'll get my money back. No. Yes. Guess what? You don't get to sue the inspector. You're not going to get your money back. Nobody's going to take the house back. Buyer beware. It's up to me to do due diligence. Lesson learned, but something was making the ground come up in the middle of the floor in this house. And I spent weeks having contractors come out and give me bids on fixing it. I couldn't sleep at night. First property I bought. I don't have a tenant yet because I don't know how to fix this problem. And there were lots of things I had to do to the property. That was just like one issue. I forget, some concrete guy showed up and he just looked at it and he pulled up the carpet, took a sledgehammer to the concrete, smashed it all up, pulled it away, noticed it was a root, and he's, I'll fix this for $1,000. And he did. And boy, was I scared until I figured that out. But I persevered, and I think I had to get maybe quotes from 10 people before this guy showed up with a reasonable quote. I think I paid him in cash probably. I remember his name was Pops. But the other issue was when it was vacant for 3 months after it was ready. So I was worried about that. Things were slow. I didn't know what I was doing. And then when they moved into the property, the tenants, they called me up and said, there's no water. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no water? There was water a few days ago. Somebody went into the house, under the house, and stole all the copper out. And so I think it was maybe $2,000 or $3,000. I forget what it was. $2,000 maybe to redo all this stuff. We didn't use copper, but redid everything that was stolen. And I was like, this sucks. Like, this is tough, right? I'm still going to cash flow. I'm going to live. But man, did I spend a lot more money than I needed to. And man, was that stressful. People at the time are like, you know what? I guess you've figured it out. Real estate isn't for you. It's tough. It probably isn't your thing. And I was like, screw that. I want to buy 2 more properties as soon as I can. And I think that ended up being around Christmas. And I had 2 properties purchased within a few days of each other around Christmas. Properties 2 and 3, those 2 properties are awesome. Still own them to this day. I moved to Germany in 2014. I moved to Korea in 2017. I moved back to Montgomery, Alabama in 2019. And during that time, I went from 6 to 20 properties and just was enjoying life. Back in the state, I came back in 2019. My career could have continued in the military and I could have went to the Pentagon and made the next rank of colonel and went on to keep doing all that crazy stuff. But I wanted to come back to Montgomery, wanted to retire at the 20-year point, and just wanted to focus on real estate and staying in one place for my family for the foreseeable future. It's not that I love Montgomery, Alabama, but it's been so good to me financially. And there's such a low cost of living here that I've grown to love it. Can't seem to get any friends or family members to come visit me here. Damn it. I got from 20 to 30 doors fairly quickly, 20 paid off properties. And then when COVID started, I had this idea, I guess I was right, but I had this idea of maybe stuff will go on massive discounts because people are scared. And maybe I can just buy a bunch of properties cheap. I bought a 6-plex and a 4-plex fairly cheap right when COVID started and people were scared. But it didn't take long. The stock market went back up and the real estate market stayed strong and there really weren't any more deals out there. So I went from 20 to 30 properties. I was ready to buy more, but we didn't get the big, deep discount that I thought we might get. I'm still waiting for that to come. When it comes, I'm going to buy a bunch more. I'm still buying though. I've bought 5 or 6 properties. I'm not sure how many it is, 7 or 8 properties maybe in the last few years. Some flipped, some added to my portfolio. In 2021, I got divorced. I'm not going to go into specifics about the family side of it. It's very tough and I hope everybody can avoid it, but lots of people have been through it and I've been through it. I guess what I feel like I'll end up talking about in the future, at least to a certain degree, because I think it'd be helpful, is going through a divorce when there's maybe significant assets and significant things to think about and be concerned with and hopefully do correctly. What I'll say about my divorce, and I don't want to say much about it, but obviously for a retired military member where his spouse at the time wasn't working, compared to the typical one, I was fairly high net worth. I'm not saying compared to a software engineer, but just among military retirees, I was fairly high net worth. And there was a lot to think about when it came to getting divorced. Somehow we were able to manage that without it getting ugly, without even going to court. Kids didn't see anything crazy. We were able to split things up in an equitable way and move on with our lives. And I think there are lessons there that can be helpful to others. So I'll find a way to try to get into that while being respectful to other parties involved. But I wanted to say that you can't understand my life without understanding that aspect of it. I'm going to talk about what I have decided that episode 2 and 3 are about. I'm going to have guests. I don't know if you guys notice I set this thing up behind me here to have podcast guests. When I built this office, I had podcast guests in mind. And I think I'll have access to some pretty cool people. They won't always come here. Sometimes it's going to be on with software. We're just going to be talking over software. I'm not sure if that'll happen on the YouTube live or not, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But going to have guests, but I'm not going to be guest based. I have plenty to talk about myself. I have plenty to share. I want to have guests. I'm going to have local guests sometimes, and then I'm going to have guests that I've gotten to know through my time as someone who has an online platform and has went to a lot of conferences with other people that have fairly large online platforms. So what I've done in real estate since then is what? I guess since I retired in 2020 here in Montgomery, Alabama, I took over management of my rental properties from my property manager. They charge me 10%. You would think that means that I started saving 10%. No, I didn't start saving 10%. I saved a lot more than 10% by switching over to self-management. But that's once you figure things out, once you streamline things, once you to the point where I'm doing things better financially and decisions, just the way things turned out with money, I was doing it better than the property management company did. And they were a good company. But nobody cares more than you do about your properties. And that's what I found out for myself. I care about choosing the right person to live in my property a lot more than they did. I care about keeping my expenses down, but I also care about fast service to my tenants when they have something go wrong. A lot of times, stuff is taken care of the same day. A lot of times, that's true of HVAC because it's damn hot here sometimes, not right now, but in the summer, 6 months of the year in the summer. I have a lot to teach and a lot to talk about when it comes to property management. I'm going to write a book, and that's what my first book is going to be about. And I'll make it like I'm making YouTube videos again. I put up 3 episodes in the past 4 days or 3 YouTube videos in the last couple of days. So what else have I done since then? I became a realtor, and boy, I wish I would have done that a long time ago. Should have done that in 2019, but I did it about a year and a half ago. It's really helped with investment, but I have a lot of people that will know me from podcasts and social media and just reach out to me and they're like, help me buy a rental property. And I never really knew how to compensate myself for helping people back then. I don't want to put them in an expensive coaching program. I don't think that like hourly makes a lot of sense. So I'm just a real estate agent. I guide them and I take a commission when they buy and I'm happy and they're happy. And that's been going very well. I also help military members move in and out of Montgomery. I guess just like my sphere of influence, just people help them buy and sell. And being a real estate agent it's fun. I self-manage my rental properties. I send out letters to certain neighborhoods where I've been investing in, just offering to buy people's houses for cash. And that's a handful of times a year, 2, 3 times a year. I buy houses that way, very cheap from people that just don't want to put them on the market. And usually the houses are in bad shape or they're disgusting or there's like cat and dog piss in them or I've seen it all. I buy those houses, get them up and running, either flip them or, as I did a few days ago, add them to my portfolio, especially when they're like maybe a lot better than an existing rental I have. Then I'll sell the existing rental that's old and move that paid off rental to the newer one. So like recently I sold a 1950s property and now I have a 1992 property as a rental that just makes a lot more money and is in better shape and has better tenants. I think that about covers it all. I flip houses. I invest in real estate. I'm making videos and doing this stuff, and I'm going to do a lot more of this because for some reason, it's what makes me happy. And that's it. We're closing this up. Real estate is my thing, but investing is something I'm going to talk about a lot too. This is the Rich on Money podcast, episode 2. I just want to go into investing. I want to talk about 101 and 102. That's my plan. I'm just going to talk about money in general, investing in general, retirement accounts, investment accounts, my approach to investing, my approach to saving, my approach to retiring, what to do with your money throughout different stages of life. I think I've got it all down to a science. That stuff's all easy. Like it's easy and there's not much risk. There's really no risk and there's really no like work to do other than just knowing buttons to click on a website. It's like an investing or a focus on money, a focus on investing. I'm going to call it investing 101 and 102. The weekend after that is just a real estate 101 and 102, real estate investing 101 and 102. Just the basics of real estate, right? Buying a primary residence, buying a rental property, loans, taxes, rules for buying and selling, and all that kind of stuff. That's the next two episodes. This is Rich on Money signing off.